Say hi to the camera.
Imagine yourself playing the sport that you love and you've worked hard to get to where you are, and you know that the athletes that you've played against your whole life have worked hard to get where they are as well. Unfortunately, you hear your coaches talking about your opponent and how one of their players is suspended for taking drugs. You think to yourself, how could they do that to themselves? Unfortunately, student athletes are not the only students who take drugs or who have been caught taking drugs. Many drugs that students take have different side effects. Fortunately, most of these drugs have common side effects that can be traced and seen as different symptoms. Dr. Roxanne Dryden-Edwards talks about the behavioral effects that drugs give to a person. Many of the behavioral effects can include becoming aggressively violent toward others, both physically and verbally. Mood swings are very common in people who take drugs, sleeplessness, and as well as isolating themselves from the other people that they are around. Drug Rehab Center, Casa Palmara, talks about the physical effects that students have when they take drugs. Most of the physical effects are withdrawal, depression, addiction, irreversible brain damage. Students can acquire learning problems as well as an increased risk of STDs. I'm going to continue talking about the side effects and the statistics of usage among students. As there are many common side effects that drugs have, besides this fact, many students continue to take drugs, and an increasing number of students. As the Drug Rehab Center also says, many teens use drugs such as marijuana, Vicodin, amphetamines, cough medicine, sedatives, and tranquilizers. The Huffington Post has an annual survey when kids return back to school. This past year, the survey showed that 17% of students have been surveyed to be using drugs. 86% of the students surveyed knew classmates that were using. 50% said they knew a place where students used drugs near their campus. 44% of them said that they knew a classmate who sold drugs. When we think of drug testing, we think of, are the teachers trying to catch us, or what are their motives behind drug testing? Courts have ruled that an entire student body cannot be drug tested. They feel that it is against civil rights and that unless there is reasonable suspicion, a student cannot just be drug tested randomly. However, in 1995, the Supreme Court ruled that student athletes who are not suspected of drug use may be subject to a drug test. As well, they decided that other students who are leaders or incorporated in other extracurricular activities such as band or cheerleading can also be subject to drug tests. They figure that if these leaders and these other role models of students can take a drug test and know that they have said no to drugs, they will set an example for those other students to not take drugs, to say no early on before becoming addicted. I asked a teacher and a coach here at my high school what he thought about drug testing and what he thought the pros and cons were. He said that as a teacher, the pros were that some kids in schools would deter from drugs, hopefully so they would not get caught. Though they're doing it so they won't get caught, they're still deterring from drugs, they're still saying no. He thinks that it is a pro when it is not used as a punishment, but as a way to help kids. He says that if a student does get caught, the pros of drug testing is that these students can get help early on in life before they become majorly addicted or have long-term side effects because of these drugs. As a coach, he says that drug testing keeps the athletes having a goal. It keeps their mind focused on their goal of their sport and not on the drug that they're trying to obtain. He says that students, when they do use drugs and are not forced to take a drug test, he sees the negative aspects that it has on a team and as a student. They bring on a negative energy around them, and it affects all of the people that they are associated with. He says that the cons of drug tests, he says, quote, "Sure, people could argue that it could violate constitutional rights, but in this case, the needs of society outweigh the individual rights of the student," end quote. He thinks that, yes, drug tests could have a hand in kids not participating in sports because they don't want to give up their drugs, but they don't want to be caught. Drugs are an ever-increasing problem in all high schools, and drug testing students is our way to help students, is our way to keep them protected from the addictions that they could have later on in life. So when we think about a drug test as a way to hurt students or to get them in trouble or to catch them in their wrongdoing, people are bringing in the negative. When you think of a drug test, think of your way to help students before it's too late.